conference in a hybrid.
Yes, sir. Very true. And we also have Professor Kunyal has also joined, sir, and Richard has also joined.
Good morning.
Yeah, namaskar, Kunyal, sir.
Namaskar, sir. So, shall I start the session, please, organizers?
Yeah, sir. Just give us 2 minutes. We are just starting it. Arun, sir, shall we begin?
Yes, ma'am. It's completely up to you. Yes, I think we have people.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I think Professor Richard has also joined.
Yeah. Professor Richard has also joined, sir. In fact, he has just wished us good afternoon. So, good afternoon, everybody. And from behalf of the organizing committee of the International Conference, this 2-day international conference we are organizing on climate change, natural hazards, and very important thing, which is people are talking about climate change and natural hazards. We have this plenary session for today, and including in it the part of sustainability also. We have this very important plenary session for today. And taking into consideration all the 3 aspects of this conference, we are delighted to have among us 3 great dignitaries. Now, it will not be an exaggeration if I'm saying that these 3 dignitaries are actually very eminent personalities. They are highly busy and it's very difficult to catch hold of them. But we are honored and it's a pleasure that all 3 of them have given their precious time to us for this particular endeavor, because they believe that through this discourse, they are making a big contribution, and most of our participants are learning a whole lot of things, that how to talk about or how to think about this aspect, which everybody is talking, but then yes, some sort of more explanation and discourse is required on this particular topic. Now, since it is it's a plenary session and a lot of discussion has to take place, I will not take much time. And in fact, I would request my colleague, Dr. Akash, who's a faculty at SPM College, to kindly introduce the guest for today's plenary session, and then we can move to the discussion under the chairmanship of Professor Dimri. Over to you, Akash.
Akash, unmute कीजिए अपने को.
Please, technical team, please make him co-host.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Actually, I was not allowed to unmute myself. I guess the setting was there. I requested the technical team to unmute me. Good afternoon, everybody. Amrita ma'am has already introduced us to today's plenary session, but I, on behalf of the organizing committee, would like to welcome you all for the plenary session 2 of the International Conference on Climate Change, Natural Hazards and Sustainable Livelihood, organized by the Department of Geography, Kirodimal College, University of Delhi. We already had a fruitful plenary session yesterday, plenary session 1, and we hope to have a we hope the second plenary session on one of the relevant themes to be more fruitful and more engaging today. And I'm sure there will be many key takeaways from deliberations for our audience. Today, we have amongst us as a panel of accomplished and learned guests with expertise and experience in diverse fields. The presence of such huge personalities is indeed a source of great motivation for all of us. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our panel for today's plenary session. Professor Dimri from JNU, Professor Richard from Baspa University, United Kingdom, and Professor Kunyal from G.B. Pant Institute as our panelists for today's plenary session. Welcome, sir. Before requesting the chair, Professor A.P. Dimri, sir, to take over for this session today, I would like to give you a brief introduction about all the panelists we have on board today. To start with our chair, Professor A.P. Dimri is a professor in the School of Environment Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, who has over 28 years of research experience as a scientist, as well as an academician. Before joining academics, he was a scientist at DRDO, and from 2008 onwards, he is serving as an academician and a researcher as well in JNU. His area of interest and his specializations are regional climatic modeling, climate dynamics and variability, and climate change. Sir has published more than 20 research articles in various impact factor and Scopus index journals with a cumulative H index of more than 36. He has been working extensively in the Western Himalayas as a part of various research projects and academic initiatives. Sir has been a fellow at the Japan Society for Promotion of Sciences, JSPS. It's one of the prestigious fellowships, and the Indian Geophysics Union. Sir has also been conferred with Technology Award 2006 by DRDO, Government of India, and Siachen Medal by Ministry of Defense, Government of India. Sir has also an active international collaboration with different Western countries, European Unions, and United Kingdom. And Sir has also been associated with United Kingdom India Education and Research Initiative, UKD. Further, Sir has also served or given his services as an administration in different capacities in the organization he is serving presently. We wholeheartedly welcome you, sir. The second panelist for today's panel discussion is Dr. Richard Johnson, who is a reader and a senior lecturer in physical geography at Bath Spa University, Newton Park, Bath, United Kingdom. Dr. Richard has teaching and research experience of more than 15 years, and he specializes in upland mountain geomorphology, applied fluvial geomorphology, and disaster risk reduction in high mountainous region. His research interests are or areas are sediment fluxes in mountain catchment, hazard, risk, vulnerability, resilience, disaster risk reduction strategies, and in mountain catchments. His current work focuses on two regions, the Indian Himalayas, number 2 English Lake District, and Northern England. Professor Richard is also a member of various academic bodies like British Society of Geomorphology, Cumberland Geological Society, and Association for Punjab Geographers India. Sir has been a fellow at Royal Geographical Society with IBG and Geological Society, London. We welcome you, sir. And sir will be speaking on reflections on the global pandemic in 2022 and linkages to sustainable development goals and flood disaster risk reduction. Moving on with the third panelist for the day, Dr. J.C. Kuniyal. Professor J.C. Kuniyal is a scientist G and presently the center head, Center for Environmental Assessment and Climate Change, CAECC, Govind Ballabh Pant National Institute of Himalayan Environment and Sustainable Development. Sir has more than 29 years of research experience, and he specializes on environmental assessment, waste management, and aerosols climatology, and his expertise are on solid waste management, aerosols, trace gases, climate change, air pollution control, EIA. There are n number of lists to sir read out. Sir has published more than 70 research papers, 32 book chapters, and more than 30 proceedings in conferences. And he also has one self-authored book to his credit. He has been acknowledged widely for his contribution to academics and research, where he was awarded with Professor Prannath Mehra Young Scientist Award 2005, State Award 2008 for Outstanding Contribution to Environment, Lifetime Achievement Award 2015 for Outstanding Contribution in Solid Waste Management and Environmental Impact Studies by Spandan. With this brief intro, I would like to welcome you, sir. And sir will be today speaking on aerosols, radiative forces, and temperature rise in the northwestern Himalayas, India. With these little words of introduction of our learned panelist, I humbly request our chair for the plenary session 2, Professor A.P. Dimri, to address the August gathering. Over to you, sir.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you very much, Akash. Good afternoon to all from here, and maybe good morning to Richard at UK. I don't know, you are in Bath University, so maybe somewhere. Yeah, good. I'm very happy and glad to be part of this important session of climate change, natural hazard and sustainable development, livelihood goals or whatever. These three integrated way make a very, very important questions for society in general. If you look at that, it's not that climate change happening this first time in Anthropocene. If you look at the geological scale, there was a middle warm period, last glacial maxima, little ice, there were natural oscillations we have seen as far as the paleoclimate is concerned, and they are forcing many important civilizations. Here, most of the people are geographers. They know Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, many civilizations, Babylon civilization, and many other civilizations died because of the famine, because of the drought, because of the different fluctuations in the climate variability. And by virtue of there are various shifts have moved, societies moved from distant places. If you come to the distant Mughal kingdom in India, Akbar moved to Agra from Sikri because of the deficit of water. So what I mean, there is a migration linked to the various need of the societal from the climate change point of view. And climate change in the recent decade became more so important because we are looking for various warming slices, various warming scenarios, 1.5 warming IPCC is telling, and how the SSPs or RCPs with the different addition of the gases in the free atmosphere is going to affect the radiative budget of the Earth atmospheric system, and by virtue of this different radiative budget, how the climate forcings are going to be implemented in the various sectors of the society, maybe water, maybe agriculture, crop, economy, and so on and so forth. And as far as I'm an atmospheric researcher, what about the Indian winter monsoon or summer monsoon? So, and this list is going to be longer and longer and longer, right? Another thing which we saw in very recent decades in the SST warming, sea surface temperature warming, all of you are social or physical scientists. If you remember the Indian subcontinent in particular, we have a very huge impetus of the tropical cyclone from the eastern coast, as well as now from Arabian Sea also. You have a lot of tropical cyclones are coming inside. And if you have looked from last 2 decades, the characteristic of these tropical cyclones, they are moving inward up to the Bihar, Jharkhand, which otherwise was limited to the Orissa coast. And not only they are coming inward till that far from the Bengal, there is a continuous supply of moisture is also getting into the tropical cyclone, and they are yielding good amount of waterfall over the society. So these are the extremes events we are looking. Second thing, if you are looking at the daily precipitation, one-day records, our memory is very short. If in Delhi, if you remember last 2 years time, there is a lot of one-day records are broken. Maximum temperature, highest temperature in March, maximum rainfall in the month of March. Even today and tomorrow, we are going to touch 36 degrees centigrade in Delhi temperatures. So similarly, in other cities of India also, we see that various extremes are happening, and these extremes are not standalone extremes anymore. If you look at it very carefully, they are having cascading extremes are happening, like cloudburst leading to flood leading to geomorphological impacts. We have a very famous Chamoli disaster where a rock fall has taken place, and when vertical rock fall hits the ground, you have seismic generation leads to the avalanche brought down the slurry and embanks the local rivulet. When rivulet stops, you have a standalone water reservoir, and then it hits the thermal power corporation tunnel and so on and so forth. So what's happening in the recent decade, you have one day temperature, precipitation extremes are increasing, and simultaneously these disasters are not standalone disaster. They are kind of cohabiting with the many kind of disaster, and one disaster is occurring, the another disaster and supporting the other disaster, and then the effect is growing, multiple and multiplying the disaster, so and so forth, and growing up and again. And when you come to the sustainability goal, if you remember, the concept of sustainability came way back in 1992 in the UNDP meeting by Professor Barntile Commission of Environment and Development. in 1992, and that happened where the sustainability was first time kind of interpreted that what is the sustainability development people need based on the climate change or various factors, not only climate factors. That the poverty eradication concept has come. An attempt goes beyond by multiple definition to the poverty eradications, and then came the sustainable development goals, and now we are talking of million development goals on so and so forth. And then poverty is such a vulnerability thing that how the livelihood because of this sustainability can be inherently do the poverty eradication. So these are the very important aspects which has been lifted in this particular conference, international conference, and there are very good views on this kind of views. And I surely hope that with the context of the various component of livelihood, and the most complex is the portfolio of the assets is the society will be very, very important. So as I'm structured in that understanding, so I hope that there will be very good inputs from the panelists, eminent panelists by Dr. Kunyal and Dr. Richard Jones. So I stop my word here, and I request maybe Dr. Kunyal to say about a few things. So keeping in view the timeline, it is 20 minutes, Dr. Kunyal, so that we can have 5 minutes to discussion for you. I know Professor Kunyal doesn't need any introduction. He has enormous work. Professor Kunyal, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Dumri. This screen is visible?
Yes, to me, yes.
And
I
is
hope
it moving? Is it moving?
No, I
Yes,
can't
it
see
is
moving.
Not moving.
Can I request organizer if they can take charge of the screening control, please?
Sir, I request you please put on the full slide mode, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have put it in full slide mode. But now you see, is it moving or not? No.
No, not for me.
No, sir. It's not moving.
So here is moving, but I
Sir,
don't know what.
please go in the presentation mode, sir. Please try to go for the full screen presentation mode.
Yeah, it moved now.
Now it is moving, sir.
Moving.
But
Yeah,
suddenly it jumped to 20 slide number
Yeah, it's
22nd
moving.
from slide number 2.
Okay. So now I'm coming at the first,
Yeah.
and you
Yes, sir.
see, okay, now it is okay.
Yes,
No,
please
sir,
go ahead, Dr. Kunyal.
Yeah. I think it is.
Okay. So thank you, Professor Dimri, and as well as Dr. Richard, and all the what I should say host of this conference, especially Professor Sharma from JNU and Dr. Sanjeev and so many others from Delhi University. I really very thrilled or I feel my pleasure to be among you people and to share my ideas. Actually, you see, if suppose we talk about the climate change, first of all, what I speak about the aerosols. Aerosols are nothing but a colloidal system of particulate, gaseous, and liquid pollutants, which are supposed to be floating within the atmosphere. And a radiative forcing, the terminology is the difference between incoming and outgoing solar radiation is known as radiative forcing. It could be in minus also, it could be also in plus. But it depends on the concentrations of aerosols in our atmosphere or top of the atmosphere or at ground level. At 3 levels, we studied these things. And due to this, based on the nature of aerosols, whether these are absorptive in capacity or reflective in capacity, and that creates a temperature within our atmosphere. So these 3 topics or subtopics are interrelated. And as a result of this, you would see that throughout the globe is suffering due to at local level temperature rise. And when it goes up to regional level, then it starts to say climate change in a particular region or particular planet. First of all, I would say that why this is important. Aerosols studies are why this is important, because especially in the mountain environment, we don't know its status. A decade before, the people were saying that Himalaya is so pristine, there is no need to study air pollution and atmospheric pollution. But today, every individual should talk about it, because this is known as the root cause of climate change or temperature rise. And as a result of, you see, there is a temperature rise. And as I have told, in due time, that may also change the climate for a particular region. As a result of that, as a societal aspect, as Professor Dimri has highlighted, this temperature rise is shifting our crops towards higher altitudes. Orchard, apple is one of the best examples.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry interrupting. Your slide is not moving, sir. I think you shall stop sharing and then again try to reshare. Then it shall work, sir. My apologies for interruption, sir.
Okay. So you are screen sharing. It is not sharing again. You saying?
Kunyal sir,
Ji.
can you go go for Goa type without slides? Because that will waste time.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I know you.
Yeah. Otherwise, I can speak. No problem.
Yeah, you
Okay.
in the meantime you send to organizers and you
Okay.
keep going. In the meantime, organizer can fix.
Yeah, we can
Okay,
fix it, sir. You please
Yeah,
send it
you
to
send
us.
to the organizer mail, and in the meantime, or if you need time, then I may request if Richard is ready, then we can flip like that.
I think Richard, we can, yes, Richard can speak first. Okay. And in the meantime, I will share my slide to the organizers and they will be
Okay,
able to
okay.
show the screen.
Because for valedictory, we have to finish this session in time, I am told.
Okay.
So
Or
in that,
otherwise, I can stop my slides.
I think you go ahead, extempore,
Okay.
and then
So-
it will be better in continuation.
So two sites we have taken regarding this aerosol studies, and then we created the infrastructure, and we have installed a multi-wavelength radiometer at Mohol Kullu, and here we have used sun photometer, and with these equipments we came to know that shorter wavelength have higher concentration of pollutions. This means that the shorter the wavelength, the higher the energy and smaller the particles. So the fine particles are supposed to be generated from anthropogenic sources only. Those could be by mass burning, vehicular emissions, and open waste burning. And due to this, what is happening that in our system, there is an imbalance in between fine mode particles and coarse mode particles. Fine mode particles, as I have told, that only this is because of anthropogenic origin, and coarse mode particles are supposed to be from natural sources. So as a result, what is happening? There is radiative imbalance in our system. Radiative imbalance, as I have told, that the difference between incoming solar radiation and outgoing solar radiation. If suppose that becomes in plus, and then this means that our atmosphere is going to be warmer. For example, in northwestern Himalayan perspectives, we have observed that around 30 watt per square kilometer per square meter atmospheric warming takes place as compared to at our top of the atmosphere. Actually, what happens is that we study these aerosol studies at three levels: at surface level, at atmospheric level, and at top of the atmosphere. And beyond that, we call it vacuum. So our atmosphere is going to heat it up, warm up by around 30 watt per square meter. And our Earth's surface is going to cool down. What is happening? The radiation which is coming, to which we call solar irradiance, that is coming to our Earth could not reach because it is lost in between within the atmosphere. And within the atmosphere, because there are concentrations of aerosols, and those could be also, black carbon, those could be also sulfate aerosols. And there are basically, again, there are different types of aerosols. If suppose black carbon aerosols are more, then this means that we have more absorption capacity of solar energy. If suppose sulfate aerosols are more or they exist, then this means that they are reflecting back to the solar radiation. As a result of that, on Earth's surface, there is always cooling effect. And fog formation in Delhi it's one of the best examples during winter. So as a result of that, what is happening? Always I speak to my people that always the pressure belt is created where on Earth's surface. Pressure is high. And whereas within the atmosphere up to tree height, pressure is low due to high temperature. As a result of that, our winds is blowing from high pressure to low pressure. And as a result of that, you might have seen at world level where there is anthropogenic impact more, you will find there are a lot of cyclones, thunderstorms, and later on they take the form of cloudburst and so many climate-induced disasters. As you have, last year you have seen that there was a havoc, rock falling, snow bursting, avalanche, all these things you are seeing, flash flood, you might have seen throughout the Indian Himalayan region as well as other different parts of the country. So our question is here now, unless we don't know its sources, why we have told that what are the sources? If suppose we know its sources, then I think that we can minimize through the interventions of our scientific techniques, come traditional techniques. And after all, then we can have some adaptive and resilient capacities to the people, because our local communities are supposed to be the ultimate beneficiaries or ultimate losers. If suppose the system is okay, they will be beneficiaries. If system is not okay, they will be loser. So here the main issue is to discuss what I feel that this climate, first of all, how we can regulate this climate. As IPCC has already told that now it is increased up to 1.5 degree. And then based on that, what techniques should be ours so that our agriculture crops, hill crops, our water sources, our forest resources, our orchard could become resilient or could become resistant, or whether we have some of the other alternatives to face this climate change, so that the livelihood options, as well as the safety measures, as well as human losses, property losses, assets losses could be prohibited as minimum as possible. For me, what I think that unless we should work in two ways. First, we should minimize the pollution levels, as I have talked, at the level which we want, so that if suppose anthropogenic pollutions could be reduced, for example, forest fire. Throughout the Indian Himalayan region, there is a need to check the forest fire. If suppose forest fire takes place, then you will see that whole of the ecosystem is going to be disturbed. So we need to aware the people, and we also at the same time on government level, we need to develop such techniques that we should not allow the forest fire. We should have some of the techniques. If suppose in a certain patches forest fire takes place, then it should not spread in other areas as fire lines and so many things we talk about. and some innovations is also required. If suppose we could use some of the, I don't know how much we are capable, but you might have seen that sometimes a sprinkler throughout the helicopters and other things are also done. So it is a coordinated effort. In policy industries, it is a coordinated effort. If suppose a stakeholder at grassroots level are made aware, and their knowledge also could be clubbed together with the innovations, I think, and the government should also come forward with some of the policy implications. I think that there is always solution, and we can control as much as possible. So this is all from me. I will not take much time, and slides, no problem. I have told you the essence of this. Due to this aerosols, around 0.64 Kelvin per day temperature is rising in the Indian Himalayan region. And if suppose you see the radiative forcing, our atmosphere in northwestern Himalaya is going to be warmer, whereas on Earth's surface, it is going to cool down, as I have already told you. And the top of the atmosphere due to black carbons has in little bit around 2 or 3, around 2 watt per square meter is going to be heated up. So these are all are scientific results, and these are also going to be, what I should say, tested in other sites also at Katarmal, Almora also. So based on this, I have taken the example, and I think that we will keep on discussing. But before that, we need to be very aware of, and students especially can play a great role in this society, and those are supposed to be a bridge in between, in between stakeholders as well as the research organizations or universities. So thank you very much, Professor Dimri. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kunyal. I'm very sorry for this technical glitch, but however, you have enormous work done over the Himalayan region, and particularly warming and aerosol interactions, and that is a very valued observations. So we have time. Can we have questions for Dr. Kunyal, please? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
Yes, sir, audible.
Yeah. Can we have few questions from Dr. Kunyal? Dr. Kunyal, if no one has, I have one question, but in particular leading to species change because of this warming.
Yeah.
And you have, I think, enormous work done on the plant species shift because of warming. So my point being, the atmospheric researcher, will there be a kind of a micrometeorological shift if this happens, if species changes in the foothills of Himalayas?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
And so micrometeorology will change.
Yes, definitely. And due to this temperature rise, we have found that there are two types of changes. One is, for example, vegetation is shifting towards north. At the same time, apple belt in Kullu Valley, initially it was at the level of 1000 meter Bajora. And now it is shifted up to Katrai, just double. And that's altitude is 2000 meter. So you can think that below Katrai means below 2000 meter. Now we are not getting chilling hours. Chilling hours means we need 6 to 7 degree minimum temperature up to 1200 hours. Then that is the possibility of fruiting in the apple. And the second thing is that early flowering in Rhododendron campanulatum, grass. You might have heard that 2 or 3 months early flowering is going to be experienced, especially in Sikkim and other Himalayan regions. So these are some of the changes. And glaciers, you already working, glaciers in Karakoram, somewhere it is increasing, but largely the small glaciers are going to be melted faster compared to the large glaciers. And to the audience knowledge, I would say that we have studied also Parvati Glacier in Kulu Valley, and we studied their black carbon aerosol. Then we found that 217 nanogram per cubic meter on average for 3 years study was there also. So this means that air masses are supportive to transport air pollutant from one place to another region. Why I am saying that it is not necessary that if suppose my region is pristine, it will not be polluted. So atmospheric air masses are also taking place along with our anthropogenic activities at a place. So this is the all.
Sir, so please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Kunyal, for your elaborative this thing. And we may have few minutes at the last after listening Dr. Richards. So
Sir,
I will invite Dr. Richard, please, if you have presentation and which works maybe. And
sir, with your permission, there are a couple of questions in the chat box.
yeah, I have seen those questions, and
yes.
these questions are for everyone. So I'll take them on at the last of the session.
Yes.
It's not specific to Dr. Kunyal, otherwise I would have taken first.
Yes, thank you.
If anybody has any specific question to Dr. Kunyal, please put in the chat box. I'll be happy. Dr. Richard, 25 minutes, please.
Can everybody hear me? And good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Richard. We can hear you.
Wonderful. Well, I feel very humbled to be invited to join you this afternoon. I actually wish I could be in Delhi, but it is not to be. So I'm now going to hopefully present my screen to you. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see that.
So it's in slideshow mode.
Yeah.
And if I advance, did it advance?
Yeah, we can see that advancement.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to briefly talk to you today with sort of various hats on. By training, I'm a physical geographer, I'm a geomorphologist. But my presentation is somewhat broader. It has personal reflections and it has reflections beyond my own discipline. And I think it's increasingly important that we start to think about the experiences that we've all shared throughout our lives, but certainly in the last few years. So really what I want to do today is to share some reflections with you, some of which I've shared with some colleagues in the audience before, but I think it's important that we continue to revisit and learn from these. So I want to say a few things about the pandemic and how that's perhaps influenced our lives and our thinking and the lessons perhaps we should take from that. But more so to link it to research I've been involved with numerous colleagues in India, so Dr. Kunyal, who's in the audience, but also professors from Himachal Pradesh University and colleagues at Delhi University as well. So I'll draw on one particular thread of that research. So first of all, let's just sort of reflect as individuals on the journey that we continue to share, because I think it would be fair to say that the global pandemic is not finished. It's an ongoing story. So these are some data from Johns Hopkins University in the United States, who are maintaining a global dashboard of the impacts of the coronavirus. And so when we look at these data, they're actually staggering numbers in terms of the number of cases, in excess of 445 million, in terms of the number of global deaths, which sadly is approaching 6 million, and the number of vaccines administered at 10.5 billion. So these are staggering values. And when I actually put these slides together, I compared it to a version of these slides I presented even just a month ago. And these numbers have dramatically risen. Perhaps globally, the good news is that the Omicron wave is receding and the number of weekly cases and fatalities is declining, but they still remain at terribly high levels. Indeed, just in the last week, the UK's cases have started to rise again. So, like I said, I think this journey is ongoing. And in response to these journeys, we've seen a very centralized approach in some nations, and certainly the UK is an example of that, where government agencies have taken a very strong steer in providing rules and regulations and public health measures. And these are continuing to evolve. So it's actually a challenge for everybody to try and understand what the current regulations are and how we adapt and best behave in those. And here you can just see some examples from UK government websites, but also from India as well. And so, you know, we need to be aware of these contexts that impact our lives and our responses to these ongoing risks. But the media narrative, the societal perceptions are very dynamic. And in this, I think there are lessons about communication. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the COVID pandemic. It can be about all the challenges that we share together. Those could be climate change, they could be disaster risk reduction, etc. But the world is now absolutely snowed by digital information. And we're all aware of sort of statements about false narratives and misinformation. So I think one point I would share with you is that we need to apply our skills and knowledge, and that is to be critical of the information we receive and to test that information with multiple narratives and more so evidence. So here you can see a number of BBC media reports from the UK, and the narrative relating to government policies that we have to now live with COVID. We need to have a recovery in our economy, and all the narrative is that get on with life. But of course, there's still a very large number of infections in society, many people in hospital, and indeed still quite a high level of fatalities. So these are the sort of narratives that we're living with in the UK. But there's no doubt we have turned a corner globally. Vaccines have definitely assisted. There's more preventative and post-infection drug treatments. But again, we need to reflect on these scenarios. But it's not just about those narratives. We can start to measure the impacts. And these are some UK data on some of the economic costs. And you know, these numbers are staggering by any measure. So in excess of 370 billion pounds, so getting on for what, 500 billion dollars in UK units of billion. So that's a staggering amount of money. You can see the impact on global stock markets, not just in the UK as shown here, but you see that massive reduction at the beginning of 2020 and the subsequent recovery. And of course, it remains volatile with what's going on in Eastern Europe at this time. And in terms of the long-term picture, to place this into some temporal context, you can see the UK economy contracted in excess of 10% in 2020. And so these were staggering economic perturbations to society. So actually we have a responsibility, not just for ourselves, but for future generations to take stock and learn from the impacts of these major societal events for which we have good data. But it's not just about those collective experiences. We also need to think about our life journeys and what have been those formative moments, what have influenced our perceptions, our aspirations, and indeed our careers. And I appreciate many of you might be at the beginning of your career and thinking about those directions that you wish to take. So sharing ideas, sharing the current challenges and thinking about how we better address them is one of the great opportunities that conferences like this afford. So some reflections from me. Yes, that is a picture of me a number of years ago. And I've been very fortunate in that my parents took me skiing, typically in the European Alps. And actually that had a major impact on my interests in life, in particular mountain environments and weather in mountain environmental systems. Not just because I wanted good snow to go skiing, but I started to appreciate the impact of floods and avalanches and the impact of changing climate on those local communities just by being there and observing it. And of course, that then led and developed into my academic interests in geography. I undertook an undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in geography, specifically physical geography. And in this photograph here, we can see a stream in the Italian Alps, just south of Mont Blanc, Europe's highest mountain, and you can see a map of the same area. So this is the Glacier du Miage, so next to a lateral moraine at the side of the glacier, and we've got a sort of a stream coming out of the foreland of that glacier. And you can see in that black and white image, sort of bare earth next to the trees, we've got a hill slope failure, one which actually blocked the stream. And a particular interest of mine, coming from a background in fluvial geomorphology, was the impact of landslides on channel systems and the metamorphosis of those streams. So that's a lot of my origin in wanting to understand the connections between hill slopes and channels in mountain environments. So I think the point I make to you is even my own academic directions are founded in many personal experiences earlier in life. But it's not just those individual experiences. We've experienced things as society in the last few years, and we have a few pictures here that sort of are symbolic of those journeys. So the reduction in air pollution, linking to what Dr. Kunial was just saying about aerosols in the atmosphere, and we observed with a reduction of transport and industrial activity in 2020, massive improvements in air quality in the Indian Himalayan region. And indeed, you could see the Himalayas from many tens of kilometers distance, something which is a rare occurrence. We've also got stark pictures in 2021 of obviously hospitals and cities, in Delhi in particular, running out of oxygen during your sort of pandemic wave. And of course, these are really emotive, upsetting and challenging scenes. But I think the point I would like to share with you, whilst they might be significant to us in our lifetime scale, they are not unique. So words like unique and unprecedented get used too liberally. So we have a photograph of plague incidences in India at the very end of the 19th century. So I think as society, we keep going through these episodes, and I think it's important to place our journey in that longer term historical picture in order that we learn and adapt to these challenges more appropriately. And of course, talking of challenges, I think we're all very much aware of the unfolding situation in Eastern Europe. And in terms of data, this is where we need a little bit of critique. So I've shared with you some data, again from Johns Hopkins, about the incidence of daily cases in the Ukraine. And you can see in the last few weeks, the data say there are no cases of COVID occurring in the Ukraine. Well, obviously, we can understand why those data are false. But if anything, given the mixing of people, the mass migration, the disruption of life and normal services, then we might be in a scenario where we're precipitating the conditions for further new variants and massive explosions of COVID cases. So I think we need to be aware that individual events and hazards are part of a wider, more complicated, cascading and interconnected set of scenarios. And I think that's always worth remembering. We don't take things in isolation, but we look at them in the bigger picture. So really with that context, I wanted to share with you some research that I've undertaken with Jagdish at the GB Pant National Institute of Himalayan Environment, Himachal Pradesh University, Delhi University and some partners in Canada. So I present this on behalf of that collective research team. So we've really together over the last sort of decade been working on if you like, floods in the Kulu district of the India Himalaya. And we've taken multiple strands to this investigation. And these include scientific-based reconstructions of historical floods using paleocompetence and paleoclimate data. They've involved very much social science and participatory tools aligned to policy and community empowerment, to assess community knowledge and aspirations to be involved in measures to reduce disaster risks, so a very social science approach using film. And we've also used archive or documentary records to look at flood incidents historically. And it's this third strand what I briefly wish to outline some interim results with you this afternoon. So I think the point I would make to you, yes, I'm a physical geographer, specifically looking at floods and landslides, but I'm talking to you today beyond that specific domain of academic expertise and reflecting more widely, and to demonstrate to you that we can evaluate these challenges by taking quite a broad approach, drawing on the tools of multiple disciplines, because they all have something genuinely valuable to say and help achieve the ultimate objective. And this objective here is about communication, understanding, and the reduction of disaster impacts on both environment and society. Just as a way of an aside, I will just briefly flag to you the Pathways to Resilience work, which was the participatory work, which was largely undertaken by GB Pant. and Bathspa University, but there's the web page there. There's a film, which I know some of you in the audience have seen, but take the opportunity to go and look at that via Vimeo, and it gives the community perceptions and some thoughts about how we better manage those challenges. Equally, there are academic papers and a policy practice note, which is designed to influence the governance and the operation and management of these challenges. So that particular Pathways to Resilience project was very multidisciplinary in that it used films, it used press conferences and media events, it attended the Kulu Dusra International Festival and worked with the local communities and the villages. It's involved workshops which were hosted around the world, but also in Kulu with GB Pant. So what are the key lessons from this particular phase of the research? Well, multidisciplinary tools really do make a difference in that it makes our knowledge and other people's knowledge accessible to a broad audience. There really is a genuine need to value and listen to local communities and work with them in order that together we can actually achieve an acceleration of disaster risk reduction. And in this, we've got to link it to climate change and sustainable development goals. It's not just one thing in isolation. That said, disaster risk reduction policy globally, nationally and regionally still has opportunities to develop, and our research highlights some of those opportunities that exist. And also coming back to our sort of original reflections on the COVID pandemic, I think we've observed that despite being signatories to these international accords and having all our fancy disaster management plans, things didn't quite go as to plan. There's still been significant impacts and lessons to learn. And I think we need to systematically evaluate our experiences and refine them, not just in the case of disease pandemics, but across the spectrum of disaster risk reduction. So for the remainder of the time, I really want to talk to you about our use of documentary archives to understand historical floods in the Kulu district of Himachal Pradesh. Here you can see a few photographs which might suggest to us why we would expend our time doing so. The top photograph is just south of Manali, and you can see the Beas River in flood in September 2018, bringing significant damage and disruption to daily life and infrastructure. And this matters because of communities. And these communities can be formally settled, but also informally settled. So in the bottom photograph, you see Nepalese migrants informally settled on a tributary stream of the Beas River called Fozal Nala in the Kulu district. So focusing on the Kulu district, and I'm sure many of you may have visited the region, and indeed I know some of you in the audience lived and have worked there for many years, so indeed are specialists more than myself. But we're talking northern India and the northwest Himalaya, Himachal Pradesh, and specifically one of the districts, the Kulu district. And this database focuses on two tehsils to the north of the Kulu district, so Manali and the Kulu tehsils. And that's not an abstract selection, but it reflects their environmental and societal history and the significance and the risks of floods in that region. There is a body of existing knowledge in a number of national, regional, and international databases. I'm not showing you the data here, but they typically have about 10 entries for the region, typically over the last 30 to 40 years. And what you can see here is the State Disaster Management Authority's database of floods. And if we were to zoom into the Kulu district, I draw your attention to the red dots, and those represent locations of historical floods. There don't seem to be many in this official public version of the state database. And indeed, if I was just to highlight Fozal Nala, just an example stream that we've spent quite a bit of time working on, there are no red dots. So according to the state database, there is no incidence of historical floods in that catchment. However, if we were to just start to look at the historical information, that is false. The narrative is false because it has been impacted by numerous floods and landslides and earthquakes over the years. And I just highlight a few of the significant ones to you there. And indeed, in terms of historical flood impacts, Fozal Nala has the unfortunate accolade of recording the most fatalities known in a flood event in the valley in the last 200 years. due to a landslide lake outburst flood, and was heavily impacted in the September 2018 floods, but there were no fatalities on site. But you may recall that there was an And continuing, you can also look at local knowledge, be that oral knowledge or documentary knowledge. And you can observe here the case of August 1994, a flood in the Jwalamukhi Nala, tributary of Fozal Nala, which was again a fatal flood, unfortunately. So the knowledge is there, but we need the means and the effort to extract and compile that knowledge. So this brings us near to our end, and in particular the database that we've been working on for a number of years as a team, and this is an ongoing endeavour. So what I say here is interim. So this particular flowchart or diagram just gives you quite a lot of information, but it is the structure of this database, which is drawn on wider international approaches. But in essence, let's look at the blue boxes. The database has citation information. It tells us when the floods occurred and where. It tells us about the flood characteristics, i.e. the what, in terms of causation mechanisms, impacts on environment and society, and finally the management processes. And that database has 80 categories and over 10,000 entries. It's largely based on newspapers drawn from the locations you can see there. In particular, archives from the British Library and the NML in Delhi. It covers a period of just short of 200 years, and put that in the context of what I said, that the existing databases in society are typically 20, 30 years in duration. So this significantly expands our timescale of knowledge. It's drawn from a very large collection of data, hence the amount of time it's taken us to read all these accounts and analyze them. It largely focuses on the summer monsoon months, but not exclusively. The data was collected over a period since 2013, but largely 2018 to 2020 with funding from the UGC and UK ERIC. And it focuses on, as we've already said, just a small area of the Kullu district, but that in itself accounts for about 0.7% of the area of the entire Indian Himalayan region. So it has a valuable contribution to make, and the methodology, when we share this in the public domain as an academic paper, will enable that methodology to be scaled up and translated to other locations. So in conclusion to the database, it records 128 floods over a 175-year period. Alongside that, we've been able to compile daily rainfall from 1891. An analysis of 114 years of data in that rainfall demonstrates that 44 plus or minus 11% of the rainfall falls in the monsoon season. If you were then to compare that to the database, you will find that 87% of the floods occur in that same monsoon season. So it is an extensive database, and when you start to look at the temporal trends, you will observe in the period 1840 to the present, 17 of those 19 decades all have floods. So flooding is prevalent in the region. That said, there are hotspot years, particularly years where floods occur, and two that stand out in the record are 1894 and 2018. But there are also decadal phases that are again prevalent for floods. 1890 to 1909 was a flood-rich period, and as is the period since 1990. And just a few final images before I close. Here are some of the research team working together at some of the archives in India, but also in the UK at the British Library. In terms of where those floods were, just some interim data here. Each of those yellow flags represents a flood location. What I can say about that in terms of spatial hotspots, there are 4 locations with a very high frequency of flood occurrence. They are Fozal Nala to the sort of middle of the image, the Savari Nala coming into Kulu. They are Moel Cad, which is where the GB Pant Himachal Pradesh unit actually is sited, but more about that another time, Jagdish. And also Bajora Nala. So there are certain locations that have a high prevalence of recorded flooding. And we've shared this knowledge through a whole series of mechanisms you can see there. And we've spoke about some of those temporal trends already. What is also evident, and I've not showed you the evidence from here, is that infrastructure in particular is vulnerable in this region. And increasingly in more remote regions, so in the Parvati Valley and towards Solang and the head of the valley, hydroelectric power infrastructure and road labourers have been increasingly impacted since the 1990s. So linking back to what we observed last year in the Chamoli district, there are precedents for similar things, and perhaps the lessons have not been sufficiently learnt over the last 30 to 40 years. It's also clear that some of the large events in this region relate to landslide, lake outburst, floods, and they are going to become an increasing problem as we go forward with climate change, with climate warming. So floods aren't just about rainfall generation, they're about other mechanisms of generation as well.
Richard, can you wrap up, please?
I will. I'm going to finish on this slide. So I think the final point I would share with you is I think we need to look at the past as a way of better informing our future. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of those results with you. I'd be very happy to discuss further. So thank you.
Thank you for excellent talk, Richard. It's a quite coincidence. All the three speakers in this session somehow related with the Kulu district. I served for 2 years, and because of flood, I moved to Chandigarh. And Kunyal Saab lived there for long, and your work, published work also, a couple of them I have read. So there is one question for you, Richard. I'm reading communities seen as, I think you could read it for better understanding. Community is seen as a self-sufficient and a priority element for environmental resilience, restoration. But how do we ascertain whether community-based resource command is a result of traditional or actual resource consciousness? Can be you quicker to answer that, Richard?
From what I understand from your sort of question and comment is the role of communities in disaster risk reduction. And I think one strand of our work, the pathways to resilience to which the question refers, I've actually had quite a surprising journey as a scientist. And working alongside the local communities and listening to their stories, seeing their records, seeing the impacts of these events on them, it really has brought home to me the actual genuine value of different types of knowledge. And community knowledge as well as scientific knowledge have both got a significant role to undertake. And so the policy brief that Jagdish, myself and others published several years ago does talk to this theme and highlight the evidence in support of that narrative and that argument, and the steps that government agencies can take to empower panchayats, their village disaster management committees, and urban equivalents in better managing these challenges. So perhaps quite a broad answer there, but I fundamentally absolutely do agree that there is a massive role and an importance in engaging local communities. And I think the pandemic has equally shown to us the need for responses and responsibility at an individual community level.
Right, thanks, Richard. It's a very interesting journey from 16 in TUC Jersey in Torrent Alps till Himalaya. Excellent work, excellent. I'm very glad to hear that. There is one question maybe for Professor Kunyal. You commented upon the incoming solar radiation, but I wanted to ask what has happened, the impact of aerosols on the outgoing radiation. Professor Kunyal. It's simple though. Unmute yourself, Professor Kunyal.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I have told that it depends on the types of aerosols. If suppose the aerosols are in nature of sulfate type of aerosols, then they have a reflective capacity because their structure is like that. If suppose in the atmosphere black carbon aerosols are more or could be, then these type of aerosols have absorption capacity, more absorption capacity as compared to other aerosols. If suppose some of the reflection is going back doesn't mean outside this atmosphere. Going back means within the atmosphere. Within the atmosphere means the definition is from our Earth's surface to up to the around the vertical height of 1000 kilometers. So because the atmosphere is only up to that height, or you can say that is overlapping our Earth's surface. Beyond that, where there is no air molecule, that we call vacuum or space. So that reflective nature of aerosols or that reflection remains, the energy remains within the atmosphere. As a result of that, the atmosphere is going to warm up. So this is the essence.
Okay. So maybe quickly for incoming solar radiation, it's a kind of a negative feedback, and for outgoing long wave radiation, positive feedback, most probably. But anyway,
Yes.
we'll not go in that
Yes.
detail.
Yeah.
So next question is from Kanchana Narsimhan to everyone. Sir, a lot of research is underway on climate change and its impact. Then why do government have a laid back attitude? Anyone?
Actually, may I respond?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes.
Actually, I don't think that government has any laguna on that part, and we consider like that. Whatever the projects we are, initiating or executing, it is only because of the support of the government. If suppose I talk about this research, which I'm telling, or whose output I'm telling, this is only from the ISRO also, and sometimes a DST. So we think that government is not initiating, but when we consider this, because our results when could not be implemented on the ground level, then the general public or the people, sometimes we also say that government is not doing anything. Ultimately, what I want to say, if suppose take for example of solid waste problem, garbage problem. Garbage problem is human-induced problem. This is one of the form of pollution. And it is generated from my house itself. How many of us, if suppose I am told that segregate your waste in biodegradable and non-biodegradable at its a source of generation, how many of us do that? If suppose I tell any of the technique after separation or segregation into biodegradable and non-biodegradable, and from biodegradable waste, we can convert it in biocompost and for our kitchen gardens and like this. But I don't think how many people do we practice. So ultimately, it is a coordinated effort. What I want to say, it is a coordinated effort among the researchers, universities, and NGOs and the government and the stakeholders, the ultimate loser and the ultimate beneficiary. Unless any of the group remains a lack of such kind of awareness, then the system fails.
Yeah.
So always we should also review ourselves, and we should, if suppose I'm perfect as a researcher, as a student, as a professor, then I should see where there is a lacuna among these groups, because it is not a single man's job, single organization's job.
Yeah.
So that I take in that way, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Then next question is from Rich, which is very relevant. India's commitment to net zero could and should it be sooner, given the challenges? Anybody wants to take? Rich, I think this COP26, I think, which Indian Prime Minister announced 2070, most probably. Yeah, so basically you remove the CO2 from atmosphere, what you emit, and have a net zero. Probably the editing of net zero CO2, in my understanding, has not been done, not the at least MOEF. Correct me, Kunyal Saab, if editing, this credit editing has been done. how much is there and how much is not there. So possibly the net zero emission needs to be kind of first edited in that many contexts of its counting, how is the producing and like that. As of now, India is very actively participating on suppressing the emission. Now the new notion of net zero emission most probably will be taken as far as the sustainability of the corporate, sustainability of the industry, sustainability of the factories. So that's what is my understanding working in the climate change.
Yes,
Dr. Kunyal, can you add quickly, very briefly?
You are correct, sir. Net zero doesn't mean that in whole of the country we can bring it up to zero.
Yeah.
But this signifies that at every stakeholder level, take for as you have said already, the factories should also follow the norms. The individuals should also practice the same thing, and based on different sectors' collective effort, then we can minimize it at our own level.
Yeah.
If suppose there is a factory, and that can follow the regulations given by the government, then this means that yes, he is not emitting, or he is within the zero,
yeah,
or he is emitting almost negligible. But how many of us do that? So regulation is must, and self education is also must. This time last year we have, our institute has done in collaboration with the Ladakh government, and Ladakh government government is doing all the best, and even they are practicing solar energy and all these things to minimize pollution as minimum as possible, sometimes to which we are calling zero level.
Yeah.
So zero level means it is based on the factory wise stakeholder level, not whole of the country level.
Yeah. The role of industry to combat climate change is kind of a paramount importance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe the last question one came, so I'll take by Sudhanshu Ranjan. We are continuously talking about community's participation, and we are experiencing that this is happening at a extent. But what I think the main challenge is to not proceed only participation, but active participation. So how can we ensure that people not only participate passively, but must be active? Dr. Richard, you have a Kullu experience of stakeholders and society. Can you comment briefly whatever view you could collect from your field service?
Certainly. I mean, I speak as a geomorphologist, not as a social scientist or a communications expert. One recommendation that we made in our policy note was to genuinely value the importance of local knowledge, and for that knowledge to be transferred and create bridges between local communities and official government actors, and for that knowledge to be used. And so that there needs to be mechanisms and structures for that knowledge to be collected and for it to be shared. And we also suggested that the ethos of a top-down, the distribution of knowledge, whilst has a value, say first aid or awareness of hazards, it also needs to be a bottom-up approach where people actually can contribute, not just as recipients, but as providers as well. So the Village Disaster Management Committee and other community-based approaches provide a forum for that community knowledge to be shared. And when I last looked at this, it was in its infancy, but it does need more attention. So yeah, it's about not just top down, but bottom up would be my suggestion.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Dr. Kunyal, GB Panth is doing a lot of sectorial and societal interaction. Can you briefly share the GB Panth's role in that context?
Actually, our main purpose is first is doing the research, and then based on our research, we are taking this into the field. And with this view, under one of the NIMSI Task Force 3 project, we have built up the capacity of the people. It doesn't mean that they are nil. One question I'm looking here in chat, that it doesn't mean that local people are not knowing. They are knowing, but the need is to, as earlier I have told, that to club some of our innovations to the, to the local knowledge. When we mix these of two, I think that then we can do more rather than entirely dependent either of two, or science or local knowledge. So I think that we are trying our level best to communicate or to become the partners, and in terms of institutions, in terms of individuals, in terms of villages throughout the Indian Himalayan region in different aspects, whether it is environmental pollution, whether it is livelihood option, or it is biodiversity, local resources, or sometimes we should say horticulture or like that. So this I can say, sir, from here. But if you any people is interested, then he can interact with me. I can share some of our institute's brochure or our institute's publications, how much we have done so far.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kunyal. I think I will not take any more questions. If anybody has any query, please directly get in contact with the speakers and with the organizers. It was a very pleasing session where various facets of the climate, environment, and disaster risk reduction has been shared by both the eminent speakers. And that what is the core theme of this climate change, natural hazard, and sustainable livelihood has come here. And maybe there are other sessions which will be doing more justice to this. So I personally thank both the speakers for sharing this knowledge. And I thank organization to giving me this pleasant opportunity to handle this. And I hand over this to the organization to take it for further proceedings. Thank you very much again to all for listening patiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dimri. Thank you for everything. And Akash, if you're there.
Yeah.
Ji, before Akash, just a minute, before you present the vote of thanks and next, on behalf of the organizer, we would like to extend our deep sense of gratitude to all our speakers, because Professor Kunyal is my supervisor, so it's my honor to say some words to you, sir. We are very grateful to you, sir, and we are also very, very grateful to Professor Dimri and Richardson. We are all honored to listen to you, and we are all very benefited by the knowledge which you have shared with you. Thank you, and over to you, Akash.
Thank you, Sanjeev, sir. I would like to thank Professor A.P. Dimri for wonderfully chairing the session and taking up all the questions put up by the respondents. And to formally propose the vote of thanks, I would like to invite the session coordinator, Dr. Amrita Bajaj. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Akash. It's indeed a pleasure to propose a vote of thanks here. And my deepest gratitude to all three eminent personalities. And in fact, I fall short of words and can't thank you enough, Professor Dimri, Professor Kunyal, and Dr. Richard, for the exemplary work you people are doing, plus, the kind of tactics with which you have shared the entire experience with our participants today. My special thanks to Professor Dimri for a very swift moderation he has conducted for the entire session. That was, again, an amazing part. And my special thanks to the participants also who have attended this plenary session, because, whenever there are no participants, any discourse can go waste. So therefore, this interaction which was there between the speakers and the beautiful questions which have been put up by the participants and how everything has been conducted, that has actually made this session a very beautiful plenary session. Now, since we are running short with the time for the valedictory session, I close by saying my thanks to my colleague, Dr. Akash, for introducing the guests so well. To conduct this plenary session with three distinguished and eminent personalities, and special thanks to the co-convener, Dr. Sanjeev Sharma, as well, along with the convener, Dr. Tripathi. And once again, thank you so very much, and namaskar.
Hello. Before signing off, I would like to request all the participants and panelists to switch on the camera for a good group photograph. Technical team, please
You woke everybody, Akash.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So are we done?
Yes, it's done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks
Thank
everyone.
you.
And
Bye.
soon,
Bye. Thanks a lot. See you soon,
Yeah.
sometime, somewhere. Stay safe. Bye.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank
sir.
you.
Uh,
Thank you.
I would just tell other participants that we are going to begin our valedictory session at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. With the same link. So you can wait for another, say, 7 to 8 minutes, and then we'll begin with our valedictory session. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
so Dr. Arun, you are telling us that we should have our tea and then join the valedictory because you are not giving us the tea in the online mode.
Oh, it's in hybrid mode and everything is available here. Ma'am, please come and join us.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. Thank you. And Richard, thank you so much. Nice to see you again. And we are waiting to see you in Delhi soon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. My privilege as well. My pleasure. Bye-bye for now.
Sri Ashish Sinha has joined to make him co-host. Sir, welcome, sir. You are muted. Kindly unmute. Acha, make him co-host.
Hello,
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir. Video open kar
Thank
do. We'll begin in 2 to 3 minutes, sir.
Absolutely fine. I'm at home.
Thanks, sir.
Please, I'm going to चुप रहो हम बात मत करो
We'll be beginning in next 2 to 3 minutes because I mean we have extended our last plenary session for almost 25 minutes. So I hope I mean we'll begin in at maybe 4 or 5. Thanks for your patience. Deepika and Pratyush, over to you.
Thank you, sir. A very good evening to all, and welcome to the valedictory session of the International Conference on Climate Change, Natural Hazards, and Sustainable Livelihoods. The two-day academic extravaganza is organized by the Department of Geography, Kyorimal College, University of Delhi.
Over the course of the conference, we have had 17 sessions, including many technical sessions, with more than 125 paper presentations from scholars, scientists, and academicians from different parts of the country and over the globe. The technical sessions hosted some brilliant presentations and impactful speeches that inspired us to take the cause of the conference forward. The contributions would be duly compiled and presented in the session.
My name is Deepika Adhikari, KMC alumna and PhD scholar at the Australian National University, Canberra, and along with me I have Pratyush Kumar Singh, KMC alumnus and research scholar at the Center for the Study of Regional Development, Jawaharlal Nehru University. We will be the hosts for this valedictory session.
Before we begin the session, we would request all the chief guests, guests of honor, and participants to please switch on their cameras for a virtual group picture. I would request the technical team to please take the picture. Do we have the picture? I think the technical team has done the needful. Now I would request our technical team to play the short film prepared by them on the conference.
Just wait a moment, he's doing that.
I'm audible. Pathi,
There is a game of
Dr.
Tetris
Pathi,
happening on a
can you
global
hear
scale,
me?
where the playing space is planetary. The world is seeing record-breaking climatic changes. Technology and gratuitous waste generation by humans is slowly losing the shackles of past, pushing this planet to a cliff edge. This pretentious circumstance needs legitimate attention before it's too late. Folks need to join together and bring in the efforts to end this catastrophic climatic trend. In lieu of this pandemonium, the Department of Geography, Kirodimal College, in sponsorship with ICSSR, Northern Regional Center, are virtually assembling together for an international conference, throwing light on climate change, natural hazards, and sustainable livelihoods. All we gotta do is get up and realize that it's getting too late.
Not too long ago, the idea surpassing 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide felt quite far off. But 2018, they were well beyond the 400 parts per million threshold. Today, humanity produces more than 1,400 tons of carbon every minute. To combat the climate change, we need to reduce fossil fuels, emissions, and draw down excess CO2 to restore the balance of greenhouse gases.
All we gotta do is get up and introspect that it's time to act.
Technologically, humans had encroached the natural environment and they are using for their own purpose to fulfill the greed. But this is the time to think about the well-being of the humanity and the well-being of the mother planet Earth.
All we gotta do is get up and unite. That it's not about people sitting in senates.
Sooner or later, we will have to recognize that the earth has rights too, to live without pollution. What mankind must know is that human beings cannot live without Mother Earth, but the planet can live without humans. Our planet's alarm is going off, and it is time to wake up and take action.
Human beings are everywhere, with settlements on every continent. We can be found in the most isolated corners of Earth's jungle, oceans and tundras. Our impact is so profound, most scientists believe humanity has left a permanent mark on Earth's geological record.
The only way forward, if we are going to improve the quality of the environment, is to get everybody involved.
So, at the end, it is here and it is happening. Quoting the Nobel laureate himself, on some auspicious occasion, the environment can in sync say, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high.
Thank you to the students of KMC for creating this educative and informative video. Let's begin the program. It is with great privilege that I welcome the patron of the conference and principal of Kirori Mal College, Professor Vibha Singh Chauhan. Professor Vibha Singh Chauhan is an esteemed and reputed scholar. She is the first female principal at the Kirori Mal College, University of Delhi. She has more than 3 decades of teaching experience, has authored many books, and has been published extensively in reputed national and international journals. Her areas of interest are non-urban cultures and literature and translation. She holds several awards and accolades to her name. I would request ma'am to address the gathering. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Deepika. And thank you, Pratyush. It's wonderful to see our alumni conduct and host this program. I think we need a constant interaction between the college and alumni, and this is an extremely good platform for it to happen. At this valedictory session, it is my privilege, I'm proud to welcome all of you, thank all of you on behalf of Kirori Mal College. The 2-day international conference on climate change, natural hazards, and sustainable livelihoods has raised very, very pertinent issues that we continuously feel about and sometimes push it under the carpet. But when confronted with the kind of problems and the intensity and complexity of the situation as it exists today, we begin to feel that actually we should have started thinking much more seriously of it yesterday. We are already late, I feel, but better late than never. And I am sure this conference, which is so widely and popularly received by different members from different areas of scholastic research, I do feel that it probably deserves and requires to spin into many other conferences that should follow this one. The response has been overwhelming, and it shows the seriousness with which it needs to be dealt. This conference has been organized with the efforts of many, many people who dedicated a great deal of time and seriousness to it. And the whole of Department of Geography, Kirori Mal College, its teachers, students, and especially the convener of the program, Mr. Arun Kumar Tripathi. I congratulate you for having conducted this program and bringing it to this valedictory function. I warmly welcome the chief guest, Dr. Shyam Sundar Agrawal, who is a retired IAS officer and has held many posts and positions of responsibility, including being the secretary of NDMA and the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Thank you very much for your presence, sir. We look forward to listen to you. Mr. Sandeep Rai Rathore, Commissioner of Police, Awadhi, Tamil Nadu. Very warm welcome to this session. And it just shows that this conference has been attended widely nationally, internationally, and really cuts across all professions and disciplines. Thank you, sir, for being here. Very warm welcome to Mr. Ashish Sinha, High Commissioner of India at Nairobi, Kenya. And this is one among various responsibilities that he is handling. Thank you, sir. A very special thank you to Professor Kaushal Kumar Sharma, Dean, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, who has been the guiding light in this conference. And we look forward to his guidance and direction in our future program. Thank you, Professor Sharma. My special thanks to ICSSR Northern Regional Center that sponsored this conference, and it would have been difficult to organize it without their support. Warm welcome and thanks to all other participants. No conference is worthwhile unless it has a worthwhile group of participants. The students, teachers, team, members, everybody, a very, very warm thanks. I'm grateful to all the support extended by all of you. So without further ado, I request the host to carry forward with the valedictory session. And once again, thanks to everyone for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for being a constant support in the conference throughout. Now moving on to deliver the patron's address, we have Professor Kaushal Kumar Sharma, the bestowing light behind many present in the gathering. Sir is currently Dean, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is also a visiting professor at many universities in Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, and Rajasthan. His research interests include agricultural transformation and rural development, women empowerment, Panchayati Raj institutions, geohazards, flood mapping, and database management of natural hazards. He has led many research projects with UGC, DST, ICSSR, THDC, ONGC, and many more public sector units. Professor Sharma is a national level expert for training on policies related to corporate social responsibility. He has delivered many lectures at several national and international conferences. I humbly invite you, sir, to deliver your address. Please enlighten the gathering with your wisdom. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Pratish. And thank you, Dr. Tripathi, for calling me to be one of the members of your valedictory section. I'm really very honored to be here with Dr. Shyam Agarwal ji, who is a retired IAS officer having a wonderful experience of so many years related to various fields of administration, as well as he has that experience in working as Secretary NDMA. When the Uttarakhand disaster took place, I hope he was there at that time, and we had a lot of meetings related to how to manage the disaster that has happened so vastly in Uttarakhand. I also at the same time to share the dais with our alumni, Sandeep Rai Rathore, who has also been IG for the Rapid Task Force when he was in Delhi. And then he took up a lot of responsibility in Tamil Nadu. I also thank Ashish Sinha ji, who is the High Commissioner, to share the dais with people like us, those who have to learn so many things from all of you in this gathering. And I also really welcome and thank all the members, those who have joined today for this valedictory session. I have a couple of points to make, stating that the climate change is one area of concern of everyone today, and everyone has a different viewpoint, how they look at. The climate change has been historically perceived and looked upon, and that is how the climate has been able to change the concept of the very survival of human beings on this earth. Not only the human beings, but of course, the biodiversity, the living organisms, they also sometimes originate and then they die. This is where the climate has been playing a very important role. At the same time, when we look at, say, how the whole concept of climate change would be looked upon, and the global changes are bringing changes at a micro level. Now, the question is whether we want to manage the global changes with micro level policies, or whether we want to bring the policy from the top down to the ground level to make the system to work in future. And this cumulative impact probably creates more disasters. And the disasters can be of various different kinds. When we say the natural kind of the changes happening place, human ecological systems are getting disturbed, the migration taking place, and I hope numerous ways to analyze the natural disasters. But one of the worst impact today that is being felt, and that has been discussed at a micro level by all the different kind of paper presents in hundreds probably in this conference, talks about, and everyone has a concern, what is the kind of an impact of climate change and the natural disaster is going to have on the livelihood. This is a common concern for everyone. Whether the kind of the food security, nutrition, health, all these indicators are attached to livelihood, or the kind of livelihood security related to particular location and area that needs to be understood by every one of us. But the question today is that when we look at, say, the globalization, I hope there's a numerous scope that has expanded under the globalization for technology transfer, knowledge transfer, for managing or mitigation the natural hazards. But how far we have been able to manage, or how much we have been able to transfer that knowledge and the technology to many of the underdeveloping countries, or far and wide to the people throughout the whole world. Now, then the question is, if we are not able to transfer the technology, then whether we are able to have the policy at a uniform level or not. But globally, when we see different parts of the nation, they fall in different pockets. And therefore, we can never have one single uniform policy. But the global area is trying to look into that, how we can have one single form of policy, and how that policy can be implementation for transformation of the local societies. So localization of the sustainable development goals is considered to be one step to mitigate the natural disaster as well as the climate change. But the thrust is on how we can have the sustainable, say, the livelihood happening or creating over the different spaces. In nutshell, I would say that there is a vast scope of the kind of a concern that has been shown in today's conference. And this concern remains a common throughout the whole world, whether internationally people are thinking, or whether the global, whether the people are thinking at a local level, the thought process remains the same. Because when we look at, say, these two conditions, everyone is directly or indirectly affected by the climate change, or maybe by natural disaster. Sometimes these all can be understood, known, but sometimes the impact is invisible, but it is happening. So when this is happening, I hope we have to understand as a geographer how to understand these impacts of the climate change, which is a broader sense of the extreme weather events that are happening because of this climate change. Now, the concern which is being shown that how the kind of the extreme weather events would create a micro level unsustainability in the total localized condition. I hope there are numerous ways to understand it. I have 2 or 3 very renowned people looking at this issue, maybe by, say, Ashish Sinhaji and Sandeep Rai Rathore, who has been practically managing through rapid task force, how to manage these kind of the disasters happening. And at the same time, Dr. Shyam Agarwal ji has been in a policy at NDMA. They will give you more insight into that, how the government of India or the institutions think about the climate change as on day today. And at the same time, how the implementing agency like NDRF also looks into these issues. Now, this is the biggest constraint, is that how we can make the life of people more sustaining on this earth. And with this concern, I hope we will be glad to listen to the finding of the conference that has happened and the nutshell they are going to relate to. And at the same time, we had 3 wise people would give and throw more light on that, how we should try to, or how a researcher would get into the research mode of doing some activities related to climate change, or maybe the natural disaster, or maybe relating it to the livelihood. I hope with this word, I would say thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak a little bit on whatever the little knowledge I carry with me. Thank you so much, the all organizing team. And I also, on behalf of everyone, thanks Dr. Tripathi for managing such a wonderful, insightful workshop for 2 days. Although I can understand the cumbersome job the whole team might have done, but that credit goes to the leader who carries everyone together and makes the event more successful. Thank you once again so much to everyone for giving me a chance to speak for a while. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your humble words and for gracing the audience like you always do. To recapitulate the conference, we have now Dr. Sanjeev Sharma, who is currently Assistant Professor at Center for Study of Regional Development, School of Social Sciences, and Assistant Director at UGC HRDC, JNU, and also the co-convener of the conference. Sir was former Assistant Professor, Department of General and Applied Geography, School of Applied Sciences, Dr. H.S. Gaur, Central University, Sagar. He was a postdoctoral fellow at Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, Mohali, and Senior Project Officer at WWF India. Now over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deepika and the Pratyush. First of all, good evening and good morning to my international friend, Avar Avinandan. Respected Honorable Syam Sundar Agarwal, our mentor, guide, and a very senior IAS officers, and retired from the Secretary Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Mr. Sandeep Rai Rathod, sir, IPS in Tamil Nadu. Mr. Ashish Sinha, Deputy Commissioner and DPR to UNEP, UN Habitat and High Commissioner of India. Professor Biva Singh Chauhan, patron of this conference and principal for the Krodimal College, New Delhi. Our guide and the person behind this all international conference, Professor Kaushal Kumar Sarma, sir. My deep sense of gratitude to you all. And I cannot tell you that how much I am happy and privileged to be a part of this international conference. As a learner and as a participant, as a co-convener. I would also remember here some few words from the Mahatma Gandhi. Once he said that in a gentle way, you can shake the world. As in the inaugural session, the convener of the international conference, Arun Tripathi, have highlighted that what is the aim, objective, and the purpose of this conference. I would not like to repeat here, but I would proudly share with you that the seed of this international conference was germinated in the room of Professor Kaushal Sharma, JNU, when we were taking a cup of tea, when taking a sip of tea, and we were discussing. And this is cultivated by Professor Arun Kumar Tripathi, other co-convener, and with his student. And during the last 2 days, the outcome of this conference, the various deliberations, discussions, and interactions are harvesting by more than 300 of the participants. And I don't know how many of now you can use the fruit of this conference in coming day. So during these 2 days, there were various deliberations, discussions were happens. And the one interesting thing which I would like to share with you that we have observed that in this conference, the student from the graduation standard, I mean that in BA, and evenly the head of the institutions have delivered the talk, not only from India, but from the abroad also. So that is the beauty of this, the conference, that how much it is the interesting, evenly the people, the participant, the academicians, scientists, researchers, not only from academic institutions, not only from the research institution, but evenly from the non-governmental organization were also participated. So that is our one of the objective, which we can say that we have achieved the goal that we need to be applied to achieve the goal by using these all multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and the transdisciplinary approaches also. And I would also try to share with you that all the paper which were highlighted here are very high quality paper, very high quality deliberation, sharing in-depth knowledge and pertinent observation also. And the interaction, whatever have done with all the participants and the resource person, the outcome of this conference will definitely we will use in some policy document or some white paper, or we will try to submit to the government, which will give, or we can use the lot of piece to the efforts we have taken. So let me say that it is also very, very inspiration to all of us. During these 2 days, there is, as earlier speaker told, that this is an international conference on climate change and natural hazards and sustainable livelihood. There were 14 themes. I will try to highlight some of them. Scientific evidence and perception of climate change and natural hazards, sustainable livelihood and extreme weather events, climate refugees and livelihood challenges, climate change and natural resource management, climate change and agriculture, water resources, climate change, adaptation and sustainable livelihood strategy, policy and planning strategy under climate change, localizing sustainable development goals, climate change and sustainable development goal, food security in the Himalaya, local governance, conflict and peace, climate justice and sustainability, and application of geospatial techniques in resource management. What I would like to say that it can include all the components of the environment, all the stakeholder, and even all the target groups on this planet Earth. The idea is that how we can develop some strategies, approaches for the well-being of the global humanity and safeguard of the environment also. I would try to highlight some of the statistics with you that we have received more than 160 abstract. Out of them, we have accepted 127 because due to the paucity of the time, how many we can arrange within 2 days by parallel, like 4 sessions or the 6 sessions. And more than 90 papers were presented by the different scholars. More than 47 Department of Geographies, more than 50 universities, including center universities, state universities, research organizations have participated in this conference. I would also try to share with you that we have also organized 2 plenary sessions in addition to 30 parallel technical sessions where the lead speakers were there. The session chair have also shared their ideas, co-chair have also their idea. Evenly, they have also have given some input, suggestions and the recommendation to the young scholar so that their research skill also be improved and they can come up with some more innovative idea in future also. The first plenary sessions, which were shared by Professor Madhav Gobind Singh, professor in the Center for Study in Science Policy, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Dr. Dermot Torney, Associate Professor, School of Law and Government, Durham City University, Dublin, was the panelist, and he has spoken and discussed his views on the global climate change cooperation after COP26, a view from the Europe. The another speaker was Professor Priyankar Upadhyay from UNESCO Chair and Professor Banaras Hindu University, Global Fellow, Peace Research Institution. He talked about climate change as a threat to peace and security. In second plenary section, Professor A.P. Dimri, a senior professor from School of Environmental Sciences, who is working on the aerosols or the climate in the Indian Himalayan regions, was the chair, and Dr. J.C. Kunyal, scientist G from the G.B. Pant Institute, and Dr. Richardson from the Wath and Spa University have shared their idea on climate change, aerosol, specifically on the Western Indian Himalaya. So these are some few of the summary which I would like to share. There are many more, but due to paucity of time, I would stop here, and I congratulate to all the participants, the chair, co-chair. We will highly grateful to you all. With this word, thank you very much and congratulations once again to all of you for presenting your paper. I forgot here that we have also organized the Best Paper Award to encourage, to motivate the young scholars. So we have received approximately 20 paper and we have shortlisted and we have evaluated by some expert and we have chosen these 3. The idea is that promote the young scholar in this all the scientific endeavor. So thank you very much, Deepika and Pratyush, over to you. Thanks again.
Interrupt, Pratyush, I have just received a message. Sri Sandeep Rai Rathore is not been able to attend. So please proceed further.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you, Sanjeev, sir, for summing up the event and being time conscious. Now I would take the opportunity to invite our esteemed guest of honor, Shri Ashish Sinha, sir. Shri Ashish Sinha is a career diplomat of India with over 17 years of experience in the Indian Forest Service. Currently, he is serving as Deputy High Commissioner of India to Kenya. He's also Deputy Permanent Representative of India to United Nations Environmental Programme and UN Habitat. He has previously served as counselor in the Permanent Mission of India to the United Nations in New York for 3 years, where he had looked after Second Committee of United Nations, which is an important body for negotiating sustainable development goals. He has also served in the embassies of India in Spain and Nepal at senior diplomatic position. Sir has also served in Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi, dealing with India's relation with its neighbor Pakistan. We invite you, sir, to share your wisdom with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Deepika and Pratyush. Just confirm if I'm audible enough.
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you. Professor Vibhasan Chauhan, Principal, Kirodimal College. Dr. Shyam Sundar Agrawal, Chief Guest. Professor Kaushal Kumar Sharma, Dean, SCS JNU. Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Sharma, Co-Convener from SCS JNU. Dr. Arun Tripathi, Convener of this conference. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, Namaskar. At the very outset, I'd like to congratulate KMC and Dr. Arun Tripathi for convening this international conference on one of the most critical issues, or rather the most critical nexus of issues of the contemporary international discourse, and express my gratitude for this opportunity given to me. I'm sure that the deliberations in last 2 days have generated a lot of useful thoughts and ideas. Friends, before I get to the substantive part of my address, I'd like to mention that I've joined this conference in my individual capacity, and my locus to speak on this topic is based solely on my experience of representing India in the United Nations, both in New York and UN EP headquarters in Nairobi, which deals with environmental and developmental agenda. I joined the Permanent Mission of India in New York in mid-2016, and it was an exciting time for both the development and environmental communities in the multilateral world. In 2015, the international community had expressed its resolve through an unprecedented set of commitments to pursuing a sustainable future. 3 landmark global agenda were produced: the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goal SDGs, within the framework of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. I was dealing with all the 3. For over 3 decades now, science has been crystal clear. The adverse effects of climate change have the potential to undermine the developmental gains of the last many decades. We have seen many times the impact of natural hazards, extremes, and the prevalence of disaster risk exacerbated by climate change. The disasters are not looming or impending. They're happening right now in front of our eyes. Adapting to climate change with an aim to minimizing its impact on exacerbating natural hazards so as to ensure sustainable and resilient livelihoods has been the key objective of the 3 post-2015 agendas. The 2030 agenda makes the link to climate change very clear by noting that it is one of the greatest challenges of our time, and its adverse impacts undermine the ability of all countries to achieve sustainable development, and that the widest possible cooperation is needed to mitigate and adapt. The Sendai framework notes that disasters, many of which are exacerbated by climate change and which are increasing in frequency and intensity, significantly impede progress towards sustainable development and sustainable livelihoods. I'll be using sustainable development and sustainable livelihood interchangeably, as sustainable development would definitely mean sustainable livelihoods. Counting on the coherence and synergy, the world set course for a transition to low carbon, climate resilient societies and economies, with countries working towards common goals while focusing on national circumstances, challenges, and opportunities. In terms of action on the ground, in the most basic sense, this coherence can be part of an effort to identify and reduce actions that contribute to one set of goals but undermine another. For adaptation, this may mean avoiding activities aimed at sustainable development that have maladaptive consequences for environment. In the event that policy priorities established by the three global agendas are contradictory, an integrated policy approach would be beneficial to resolve contradictions when possible, or to establish mechanisms to effectively prioritize goals when irreconcilable. India has already taken big strides to address both climate change issues through the National Action Plan on Climate Change and with the Disaster Management Act and Framework. Friends, in addition to these, there's a growing recognition that in many cases, adaptation requires coordination across borders because climate change and its impacts are transnational, sometimes referred to as transnational climate impacts. There are instances where resources are shared across boundaries and adaptation activities must be co-managed by all relevant actors. A common example of this is a border crossing river, while a country upstream may wish to install a hydroelectric power generation facilities as a part of its adaptation policy. This may be maladaptive for a downstream country that relies on the same river for fishing resources. In such cases, it is critical to ensure that transnational governance encourages actors to collaborate and coordinate their actions as they impact shared resources. More complex examples of transnational climate impacts involve the flow of goods, people, and finances cross borders that are impacted by climate change. For instance, changing climate may influence the agriculture production of commodities such as soy, coffee, tea, etc. Import-dependent countries will be impacted by fluctuating commodity prices and therefore will have an interest in bolstering the resilience of agrarian system many thousands of miles away. Many adaptation activities may be of interest to partners across the globe, and the international collaboration is necessary to ensure that resources are properly protected and adaptation activities are supported. As our Prime Minister Modi, while addressing the UN in 2015, had said, we all believe that international partnership must be at the center of our efforts, whether it is development or combating climate change. And the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities is the bedrock of our collective enterprise. When we speak only of climate change, there's a perception of our desire to secure the comforts of our lifestyle. When we speak of climate justice, we demonstrate our sensitivity and resolve to secure the future of poor from the perils of natural disaster. India's climate targets are focused on two sectors, electricity and industry. It is logical since these sectors account for 75% of carbon dioxide emissions. The economy-wide target of reducing emission intensity has been achieved on 12 pillars of efficiency and introduction of renewable sources in energy mix. Led by India, there has been a strong call worldwide for climate justice from the developing countries. From developing countries to developed countries, those who are most vulnerable, who suffer the most from adverse effect of the climate change, and who have contributed the least to the climate change are empowered and enabled in terms of capacity and finance to fight back. We must sustain our call for climate justice to demand from the developed countries their fair share in addressing this climate crisis. And yes, we do not have luxury of time. The 2020 deadline has long passed, but $100 billion promise has not been fulfilled. The developed nations have now said that they will arrange this amount by 2023. Friends, as you would have noticed, India's efforts during COP26 was a landmark. A deal aimed at staving off dangerous climate change has been struck at Glasgow. The pact has expressed deep regrets, quote unquote, deep regrets over the failure of developed countries to deliver on their $100 billion promise. It has asked them to arrange this money urgently and in every year till 2025. It has initiated discussions on setting the new target for climate finance beyond $100 billion for the post-25 period. And it has asked the developed countries to provide transparent information about the money they plan to provide. The other important takeaway from Glasgow is bring the focus back on adaptation. For most countries, especially smaller and poorer ones, adaptation is the most important component of climate action. These countries, due to their lower capacities, are already facing the worst impact of climate change and require immediate money, technology, and capacity building for their adaptation efforts. And as such, Glasgow again will be a landmark in terms of, it has asked the developed countries to at least double the money being provided for adaptation by 2025 from the 2019 levels. It has created a 2-year program to define global goal on adaptation. As we have seen, mitigation targets are very well defined, 1.5 degree or 2 degree below the pre-industrial level, whereas adaptation is undefined, like terrorism is not defined, adaptation again is not defined. Since it is an agenda of developing countries, it remains undefined and therefore unaddressed and unfinanced. The Paris Agreement says about mitigation alone. So this has been a long pending demand for developing countries. And there's between Glasgow and Cairo, there should be some clarity as to what adaptation would include. And possibly it will have the flexibility and space for each country to define what adaptation means for its own benefit. Friends, my experience at UN headquarters here in Nairobi, UNEP headquarters, suggests that the journey from science to policy to action has saved millions of lives and has potential to save millions of lives and protect the environment. But the experience says that it takes very long between the science and the policy action. We have seen this in the case of climate change. 3 decades ago, IPCC had advocated. We have seen in case of mercury pollution, Minamata is now active. So we need a nimbler and more inclusive science policy interface, one that will accelerate effective policies and follow-up action. This is how we will save and improve lives, protect the vulnerable, conserve nature, and allow all communities to thrive. To create this interface, we need to reform the speed, the solutions, the diversity, in the sense that we pull in ideas from all sources, and digitalization. The digitalization has a lot of potential for democratization of the whole space. And in recent times with COVID management, we've seen the value of tracking and targeting. So that is also very much possible with the help of digitization. Whatever the science suggested policy making efforts are, where they are, what stage of implementation they are, how well resourced the governments and actors are. So all that needs to be expedited in order to save, in order to really make benefit from the science advocacy. So friends, I'd like to conclude now by expressing the hope that the worst of the pandemic is behind us, and the concerted effort by governments for the post-pandemic recovery would ensure a much greener recovery than the economic activities in the past. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening our audience with your elaborate experience at the UN. I'm sure you have inspired many people amongst us. Next, I would like to call upon our chief guest for the session, Dr. Shyam Agrawal. He joined the Indian Administrative Services in 1980. During his service, he worked under the infrastructure development sector such as energy, highway, and rural development. He has worked in the finance department for more than 3 years under Rajasthan government, as well as principal secretary in agricultural and allied department. He also served as joint secretary under the Government of India in the Department of Commerce and worked in the Ministry of Welfare, Government of India. Sir was former secretary to National Disaster Management Authority and Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India. Lately, he joined the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, Government of India in the capacity of Additional Secretary and Development Commissioner. I'm honored to invite you, sir. The platform is yours.
Welcome to all. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here in such august gathering of academics. I would like to draw the attention on the other side of the story, because this part of the story on the fair side, how we should go ahead, how we should do is one. I'll rather like some attention to the more policy aspects and the implementation aspects that we face. Just to put a clear picture, India has a geographical area of 2.4% of the global geographical area. Population close to 18%. And coastline, we have about 7,500 kilometers, and our fresh water is only 4% of the global availability. So this puts the thing in a proper perspective. Now, Mr. Sinha just now mentioned out how it is important, but one thing I'll just like to say, from 1852, there are some statistics. There is a paper by Professor Tejal Kanitkar from National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore. She mentions that in the 70 years from 1850 to 2019, there were total carbon dioxide emissions were 2,500 billion tons, of which 60% was by 18% of the developed population. Of the world's population, 18% can be considered as developed, largely constituting European countries and US and UK and all these. So they actually did 60% of the carbon dioxide emissions. If you look at this scenario, and that actually further their development. So there is a need of economic development and economic well-being needs proper energy use. And that energy use was more fossil fuel based and all that. So it created some, actually there is another group of academic papers which say that this net zero declarations and all these insistence is actually trying to push back the developing countries to a level of underdevelopment than what it should be. Because if you have used 60%, your 18% population have used 60% of carbon dioxide emissions, it looks that there is a link between the economic well-being and these aspects. And you cannot, of course, now new technologies have come up and you have to take up, like I had read one article on the pumped storage hydro projects. In India itself, we can have about 120 gigawatt potential has been identified of the pump. That means presently we are largely using the gravity-based hydro projects. But if you pump the water and the energy used in that vis-a-vis the energy generated is a minuscule factor of the energy generated, probably it is much more beneficial to do such pump storage. But we have only, they have identified, government has identified about 120 sites, of which only 9 sites are working with 5 gigawatts. The total capacity potential has been estimated at 120 gigawatts. So we have technologies, we have resources, even within the scarce resource base, we have some resources by which we can advance to some action on climate change. But my feeling personally is that climate change should not be a big hullabaloo by which the development is impacted. The development has to be taken care first. I mean, being secretary in the Ministry of Tribals, as you know, these are the lowest rung of the society. And they live in the most vulnerable section of the, in the hills and these things. And they're most vulnerable. So if you want to take, then you have to provide them something. And the economic well-being should be the priority. So this is a paper by Pumped Storage. What I gave it is a paper by Department of Hydro Projects in the Hydro and Renewable Energy from IIT Roorkee. So you have such options and we must avail such options. How to go about it? Because 120 gigawatt, see what's a gamut of the, what's the size of the, what we can do out of hydro storage, which will be profitable even while providing the pumped storage. So new technology, and technology, as you know, India as a country, in a developing country, we are not that advanced technologically. So technology has to be imported, and when the developed countries who have the technology, we want them anything, then they charge a heavy price. Even if they don't commit to that, at least export of those technologies to the developing countries who has the capability to use it would be a great support in terms of advancement of the renewable energy and things. Now see, just I'd like to highlight some aspects of that. India's per capita CO2 emissions are almost one of the list. India is 1.9, Brazil is 2.2, global is 4.8. We are almost less than 40, around 40% of the global average. And China is 7.1 and US is 16.1. So that also, if you rank that, then you can see that the ranking of destruction to climate aspects is actually a ranking of the economic development as well. Take the case of Indian states, you have the large disparities on the per capita fossil fuel consumption. Goa, Haryana, Gujarat, Delhi and Punjab are the highest, these 5 regions, these 5 states. And who are the lowest? Starting from lowest, Bihar, Tripura, Nagaland, Assam and Manipur. Is also an indicator of the economic development parameter. So we have to, going by the international thinking is one part, but our economic development needs and economic growth needs, what do they prescribe? So we have to match it somewhere in between. We have to do some import of technology, renewable energy sector and all that. So, but then it needs some concerted thinking, and I hope some research should take place in this regard, that what is a more balancing way and where are the pitfalls, what sort of policy changes you need. Say in renewable energy sector, in the solar sector, India is well endowed in solar sector. Even in solar sector, the states which have the highest use, highest capacity, that is Karnataka, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh. So largely divided in western and southern India. Nothing is happening in the northern India, and if you see the political, because these are political economic considerations. If you see the politics, you always hear in the recent elections, it's UP that shows the way of how India will be governed. Is not it a contradiction? Should not the people there, should not the policymaker there be sensitized that please look at your scenario. You are going from bad to worse, and how to go about it? They can do it. If this sort of mandate we cannot do it, our states cannot do it, then what sort of mandates will be relevant for taking into some action or policy changes? So my feeling, my request, my submission is that we must look into the practicality of it. Even the developed countries decided that they will enhance pledges by 2050 and net zero submissions by 2050. That means for another 25 years, 27 years, they will continue to overexploit, and climate change will be expedited by them. Is that it? And they are not, even at that, with a per capita income of $60,000, the develop somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000. They don't want to commit, and they expect commitments for people who are between $1,000 to $3,000. No, these need a serious research, serious academic papers in this direction, that what is happening and how it should go about it. Because a concerted move, our academics are excellent. They go present papers elsewhere. Now they must present also papers from the need of the economic well-being of Indian, and especially we being so poor. Whatever statistics may tell you and I know that 30 to 40% people in India do not have 2 meals to eat. The statistics may be 17%, sometimes 23%, sometimes 33%. But reality is that 30 to 40% does not. And our health facilities are such, one exigency in a family brings down that family from the middle level to the lower level. I have toured many tribal areas wherein we saw that in the meetings the people will tell कि साहब हमारा तो एक का बीमार हो गया और हमारी तो सारी घर जमीन सब कुछ बेचना पड़ गया. No, you have to find a way out how to go about it. Some positive steps we have taken, like this forest laws ensuring tribals their well-being, but without much of support there also. My point is that apart from going whole hog with the international कि सब क्लाइमेट चेंज हो रहा है, इतना नुकसान हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा, और आप तो वो जो कमिट नहीं कर सकते आप कमिट कर दो. Either we are very sure कि भाई कमिट तो कर दो लेकिन करना कुछ नहीं, तो ठीक है. Then the academic papers will start कि सब इंडिया ने कमिट किया लेकिन कुछ किया नहीं. So my point is basically we have to be more practical, and we have to be what is our priority? I think our priority is economic well-being of the population, Indian population. If anything comes on that way, let it be sacrificed. Does not matter. तो अगर लोगों के पास में 2 रोटी खाने को नहीं है, वो करेंगे? I'll tell you one small story. I was collector Banswada long back. Banswada has tribal population of more than 95%. Srilata Swaminathan बोल के एक lady थी who was really working for the tribals' rights. She was the daughter of a then Supreme Court judge, and she was, of course, married to a local person, and she was settled there. So she used to come to me quite often, giving me. She felt rightly so probably कि ये बंदा ऐसा है, ये कुछ समझता है, इसको कुछ बोलने से ये कुछ आके एक्शन भी करेगा, जो भी कर सकते हैं. Collector has very little field to act. Her one of the papers was that government at that time had a plea कि सब जो भी forest land, deforested land है, forest land but without any afforestation, that land should be allotted to private hands so that they will do the forestation. That was the whole purpose. No, the other side, there was a very good article at that time in EPW which came out that what this deforested land did to the local economy. I am a tribal, I don't have 2 meals to eat. What I know कि मैं illegal काटूंगा उस पेड़ को, मैं illegal काट के भी वो पेड़ को अगर मैं बाहर बेचूंगा, तो मेरे को आज के दिन, मैं बोल रहा हूँ ना 86 की बात, मेरे को उस दिन 10 रुपए मिल जाएगा. That provides the minimum buffer, minimum support price for the labor in the market. Because अगर मैं कोई को labor बेचने जाऊंगा and that fellow tells me कि मैं तो तुमको 4 रुपए दूंगा, मैं बोलूंगा क्यों मैं काम करूं, मैं तो 10 रुपए सरकारी पेड़ काट के ही बेच के कमा लूंगा. So existence of such commons land with illegal felling of trees by the poor also supported their livelihood. I of course changed quite a bit in implementation. I said कि जो पहले allotment किया उनका तो देखो यार, afforestation हुआ है नहीं हुआ है, खाली ये जमीन हड़पने का प्रोग्राम है कि जमीन ले लो, अब ठीक है, फिर करो मत करो ठीक है, climate action हो गया. I stopped. You know, the chief minister was then from Banswada. He used to come every 15 days, Haridev Joshi. 8-time MLA and probably 10-15 years chief minister. तो उन्होंने मेरे को every month the letter will come from chief secretary and the revenue secretary, आपके district में afforestation allotment कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, ये नहीं हो रहा है, वो नहीं हो रहा है. ठीक है ना? तो वो मेरे को बोले कि ये revenue secretary, chief secretary बोल रहे थे कोई एक चीज में आप काम नहीं कर रहे. मैंने बोला साहब वो एक जमीन अलॉटमेंट में काम नहीं कर रहे. बोले क्या इशू है, मैंने उनको समझाया. तो देन ही सेड कि ये बात तो सही है, लेकिन ये दिल्ली में बैठे हुए लोगों को, बेवकूफों को कौन समझाए कि सब एंटीपुअर मेजर क्यों लेने जा रहे हो आप. लेकिन आप निश्चिंत रहो, मैं चीफ सेक्रेटरी को बोल दूंगा मेरे डिस्ट्रिक्ट में तो ये अफोरेस्टेशन लैंड अलॉटमेंट प्रोग्राम नहीं होगा, खत्म किस्सा. सी द politician at the grassroots level, he knows the pros and cons. But we, in our over enthusiasm, कि United Nations Conference on Climate Action, क्या नाम है उसका, FCC, UNFCCC, Framework for Convention on Climate Change, उसने बोल दिया तो हमको पेपर लिखना है, भले जनता जाए भाड़ में, भले पब्लिक जाए भाड़ में, कुछ भी हो. I hope only that we should be more sensitive to the needs of our well-being of the society, because if the society and overall development does not take place, however there may be excellence, it will only be limited to island of prosperity. राजस्थान में भी यही होता था. करनी सिंह, the king of Bikaner, will get the shooting gold medals in Olympics, but does that mean our sports standard has improved? At least now it has come to a level by which common man also joining, and then they are getting. So my feeling is that this talk of climate change and sustainable development part needs to be more emphasized within the 3 letters that we are using: climate change, natural hazards, and sustainable livelihoods. Natural hazard तो जो होंगे, जो आपकी resources होगी, आप उसको करते रहिए. Now with the plethora of legal statutes and all, now any type of tsunami or anything is happening, the deaths are reduced to only 1 digit. They are no more 3-4 digits. What earlier, biggest of the cyclones and these things, the deaths are very poor, because we have institutionalized a system by which the people are shifted and the necessary payment compensation is also made if their homestead is lost. My point is that we have to take a view, a more considerate view, keeping the interest of the poor households, tribal household, tribal because it is at the lowest rank of the poverty, so that their needs are addressed to. I mean, I'll not take much time. I'm thankful that I was given an opportunity to be here. I was at a loss कि मैं क्या बोलूं यार, मैं तो कोई ज्यादा एकेडमिक तो मैं हूं नहीं, तो मैंने बोला चलो ठीक है जो दिमाग में आता है पॉलिसी. Of course I have done my PhD in economics from US, but then my point is that ki hope our academic research should try to find a way, identify the technologies which are available elsewhere but is not available in India. Give it to the policymakers. Let them try their hand to import that technology. Are they able to get it cheap? If not, then why bother? You have to identify renewable energy, especially solar. Government has introduced many, but our targets on the real achievements fall far short of targets. So you must analyze, the academics must analyze what is happening in reality and what is the way out. That is more important. What policy changes, what legal framework changes would ensure that we move towards what the world wants us to move while protecting our sustainable livelihood options. That is number one, I feel. Thank you very much. I had a good time listening to and आशीष सिन्हा साहब ने तो इंटरनेशनल पर्सपेक्टिव इतना अच्छा दिया कि मैंने बोला उसके ऊपर बोलना बेवकूफी हो जाएगी. So it has been very nice. I am grateful for the opportunity given to Professor Kausal Salma and all the people, Pratyush Kumar Singh, from a lot of international participants are there. To that extent, it adds to some knowledge. Basically, I want to learn whatever I don't have. So I think I'm better off. I'll collect some papers from Sanjeev because I keep on going to JNU very often and meet him and Kausalji. I'll collect some excellent papers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was a very humble address for you, and we are very grateful for your speech, which gave deep academic insights into the niche issues of climate change. Now, before we conclude the session with a vote of thanks, I would like to invite Dr. Sanjeev Sharma to announce the papers chosen from the technical sessions for the third, second, and first prize. Over to you, Sanjeev, sir.
Thank you, Pratish, and for inviting me and giving this opportunity. So on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to share with you that all papers are very, very good. We highly appreciated the young scholars. Those, I can say that they are the expert in their field and they have done a good effort to present their paper. But out of all, which I share with you, that we have received the full 20 paper and with multiple level of the review by expert and internal review. And evenly we have taken the feedback from the session chair and the co-chair to verify or the validate whatever the comment we have received from the review. So out of them, we have received the 3 papers. So first, on the third position, which is presented by the Supriya Upadhyay, and the title was Approaches Towards Sustainable Livelihood in the Wake of Extreme Weather Events. We congratulate to you, Supriya, for your presentation and for this paper. At the second position, the paper was presented by Rojan Kumar, and the title was Rojan Kumar and al. And the title of the paper, Climate-Induced Vulnerability, Adaptation and Mitigation Strategy, a case study of Chamoli district, Garhwal, Himalaya. We congratulate to you, and we also advise you that you may be incorporate some of the suggestion also to all these speakers, which was given by the chairperson and other. At the first, it's a very interesting paper and presented by Sahid Jamal and Tenzin Namkha. And the title of the paper is Climate Change, Rural Livelihood and Sustainability in their Higher Himalaya of Kishtwar, Jammu and Kashmir. I would also share with you that our organizing team will contact with you for taking your like online detail for your banking and address for delivery or certificate. So once again, congratulate to you all and thank you very much. Over to you, Deepika and Pratyush.
Thank you, sir, and many congratulations to the winners. The technical team will collect the bank details of the prize winners and the amount will be transferred in due course of time.
I also welcome Kaushal sir, who has physically joined the meeting. He was busy fulfilling his duties as the Dean of the School of Social Sciences. I welcome Kaushal sir to the conference room.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for again inviting me. I just wanted to say that we invited our alumni, Sandeep Rai Rathore, who is an IPS and a commissioner in Chennai. And I was in touch with him and he said that he will be joining. But looking at his commitment official, that side, I just got a message from him that unable to join. And he says sorry to everyone that although I remember he never misses any kind of a function that is being organized by Crodimal College. And he's also very actively engaged with various programs which alumni organizes on yearly or quarterly or whatever the basis. He's always there to speak to the people, but somehow or the other with his busy commitment. And so therefore, looking at his commitment, he says that I'm unable to join. Thank you very much to everyone.
We very much miss Dr. Rathore here, but moving on with the session, now we welcome Dr. Arun Kumar Tripathi, convener of the conference and a distinguished faculty member at the Department of Geography, Kirorimal College, University of Delhi. He has rich teaching experience of more than 16 years. Sir has authored several articles and books and is well published in reputed journals. He is also Director, Developing Countries, Regional Development Planning Specialty Group, American Association of Geographers, and a lifetime member of the National Association of Geographers and Association of Geographical Studies in India. So I would invite Dr. Tripathi to address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Deepika. So it has been a very exhaustive 2 days of international conference. Where we have almost 17 sessions, including plenary and many technical sessions. Respected Chief Guest, Dr. Shyam Agrawal ji, Guest of Honor, Mr. Ashish Sinha ji, Dean, School of Social Sciences, Professor Kaushal Kumar Sharma, Professor Vibha Singh Chauhan, Principal Kirodimal College, distinguished guests, scholars, and dear students. I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all who have participated in this 2 days international conference on climate change, natural hazards, and sustainable livelihoods, organized by Department of Geography, Kirodimal College, in association with ICSSR Northern Regional Center. It was a lovely 2 days of conference where various deliberation has taken place. But for this valedictory session, we are deeply grateful to Dr. Shyam Agrawal ji for presiding over this session and for enlightening address. His address was unique because of his ideas and experiences, which he brings as he has headed various different organizations in general and as well as a secretary and DMA in particular. And he has very rightly mentioned about that there is some sort of concerted effort, or you can say conceptual effort by certain group of countries who are pushing the emerging economies for this net zero emission target. And he has very rightly mentioned that how how it has some linkages with economic well-being of the people, where he talked about the vulnerable communities, that how they have been more impacted by such climate change, such events which are taking place world over. So thank you very much, sir, for your such insightful address, sir. Thank you, sir. I express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Ashish Sinha, who has vast experience in dealing with issues pertinent to the theme of the conference. And he has very rightly mentioned about the issues of sustainable development, sustainable livelihood, climate justice, and planet justice, that how we do not have luxury and we are running out of the time. And furthermore, another part of his address, which was very important, that he stressed upon how the developed countries are so-called global north. They are not keeping their commitment of climate financing. He also mentioned about the recent COP26 Glasgow conference, where the negotiations on crucial issue of climate adaptation has taken place. So thank you very much, sir, for your address, sir. I thank you for attending this conference, and I know asking someone to come on Sunday and still you have taken time out for this conference. Thank you very much, sir. On this occasion, I would also like to express my mentor, Professor Kaushal Kumar Sharma, for his constant encouragement and support. The initiative he took in holding this 2-day international conference a success, and ensuring that we are in the right thing, we are doing the right thing in right way, and it has helped us immensely in conducting this conference smoothly. I must also express my gratitude to Principal Kirodimal College, Professor Vibha Singh Chauhan, for her kind support and inspiration. Ma'am, your constant encouragement and support have helped this event to be, it has made it a great success, ma'am. Thank you. I would also express my sincere thanks to ICSSR Northern Regional Center for sponsoring this 2-day international conference. I'm really grateful to them for their support. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to chairs, co-chairs, and rapporteurs of this 2-day wonderful conference. I also express my thanks to our advisors and organizing committee, as well as co-conveners of this conference, Professor Ansu, Dr. Sanjeev Sharma, Dr. Vijendra Pandey, Dr. Karunasri, for holding this event very successfully. So thank you all. Last but not the least, my heartfelt gratitude to Team KMC, which comprises of many of our former students who are doing research in DU, JNU, and many different institutions. Like Deepika is right now associated with Australian National University, Canberra, and many other such students who has been very passionately involved with this conference. And I know, I mean, we have planned this conference not long before, but just a month back, and still we have been able to do it so well. I would also like to express my thanks to my current students who has worked really very hard for this conference since months to make it a grand success. The list is large. I'm to name a few would be not correct. I can only say to Team KMC, you guys are awesome. A very big thanks to all of you from bottom of my heart. Thank you everyone. Over to you, Deepika.
Thank you, sir, for your very encouraging.
Just a moment. I would also like to thank SSS School of Social Sciences, JNU, for making us conduct this conference in a hybrid manner. Also to the staff of SSS, Manish, Vivek, and others for their cooperation in this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for addressing the gathering finally and for encouraging words. We congratulate all the speakers and the organizing team for a successful conference, and we thank the speakers for taking out time. Officially, we can now rise for the national anthem. The technical team, can you please play the national anthem for the audience?
पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्तर बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much.
Okay, with that, we come to a close to this conference and the valedictory session. I thank you all for your participation. Have a great evening and hope to see you again in many more conferences. Thank you.
Thank you.